It's time to switch on the computer, and let's get computing.
How is it upstairs this hour, friend?
It's dank.
I'm about it, dank. The dank. That's pretty rare.
I'm an artist, you understand that? An artist. Make art is easy with
Hello, everybody. And welcome to yet another episode of the Dankness. We are back. I am Dan Sickles.
And I am Jason Bailey, aka Art Gnome.
And we are hosting some of the best minds in the cryptosphere for a little bit of conversation about their work, their life, and we are digging into a bit of the crypto mythology.
Yeah, I mean, we realize that a bunch of the interviews that we hear in this space kind of just go over the same territory with the same folks over and over and over again. And it started to feel like too serious and monotonous and boring, which is like all the things that this space shouldn't be. And we know like the people that we've met in this space are awesome and have cool things to say. So we've designed this podcast to try to get at those cool people saying cool things in a more relaxed way so that we can share it with you.
And today we have a super very special guest, two of them actually together. Today we're going to be chatting with Jennifer and Kevin McCoy. We got the McCoys on today.
The real McCoys. That's my boomer joke for the episode. The real McCoys.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get to it. We give you the Dankness.
Welcome
Complete
back.
examination. McCoy's waiting.
This segment is called Show and Tell. It's a segment where we show and we tell. Each of us chooses something that we're interested in and kind of brings it up as a topic. We bat it back and forth, share our feelings with you. So I think with this episode, I, per usual, am not prepared, and we'll kick it over to you, Dan, to share something about you and your life and your perspectives.
You're best when you wing it, Bailey, so I'm sure we'll find it. So this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, actually, but I haven't really necessarily been able to articulate in any sort of articulate way. So I will need your help, Art Gnome, for this. But I guess some context is that I've been making nonfiction film for over a decade. And that's led me to some amazing places, meeting unbelievable people that I don't think I would necessarily get to meet in any other context. And a big part of that work is establishing trust between me and my team, and then the people in front of the camera who are lending me their time. And even more than their time, it's very often they're lending their stories and like they're lending their experience. And that's something that for me, I take enormously seriously. And I already feel myself getting up on my soapbox. So bear with me.
Preach, Dan.
But, like there's all types of people when you start a doc and you're reaching out and you're trying to see who might be willing to talk to you. And there are people who are like, yeah, like sign me up, put me in coach, that are very sort of ready to hop into the ring and give their 2 cents on any subject. And there are other people who will actually sort of, take a bit of time to vet you, maybe. I remember working with Pussy Riot last year. She was somebody who I remember getting on the phone with, and she's like, okay, why should I like, why should I hang with you? Why should I spend time with you? And that's a really difficult question to answer, but it's exciting to me when I sort of am engaged with somebody like that, who's demanding that of me. Right. because it
What
sort of
even
forces
is
me to
that?
articulate like what it is that we're doing. So it's like, and I don't mind it
are
either
we?
way. Like there's no good response to sort of somebody coming to you and saying like, hey, do you want to talk to me in front of a camera, and I'm going to sort of work to cut that together and tell a story. And I came to this space.
Exactly.
I came to yeah.
I feel like there's a big but, like where you're about to be like, but
Yeah. I mean, I sort of cut through the but I guess everything that I'm about to say like after this is also sort of, there are a lot of people who say that they do work similar to myself, and that say that they make documentaries, and there are a lot of people who do, and I think that
We're here for the party. And
just there are so many different ways of doing that and going about making a documentary. So I don't necessarily want to discourage people from working with documentarians. I guess I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the cryptosphere now, and like this is a particular ecosystem of communities that I was very organically became very interested in, and sort of like diving deeper and deeper into, even before I decided that I wanted to try and make a film or make sense of all of this chaos, right? And in so many ways, my crew and I have deliberately taken our time to execute and sort of figure out what the plan is in order to do that. And I guess, like, again, there's just an incredible amount of trust that sort of happens within these fledgling sort of nascent communities and these spaces where, like, you don't necessarily know what the intentions of people coming into it are. But I will say that, like, times are sort of in a lull still, like they're a bit quiet. And like we can all assume that we know, or that we feel that there will be a moment that this picks back up again, and that there's interest sort of from outside, these sort of circles again. And I guess, like, I just want to sort of say that it's like incumbent on the people within the cryptosphere to really sort of be discerning about who they are lending their time and their stories to moving forward. I guess I say this because I imagine that there's going to be a ton of people who use similar language to myself approaching people in the space in the future when this picks up again, when the attention is back on what's going on here. And I guess I also want to say that, like, not everybody has the best intentions. And when you are, in front of a camera sharing your story, you're giving the person behind that camera an incredible amount of power to edit and sort of play with that footage however they want.
I am your creator. You are the creator.
And I think that there's something in that dynamic that isn't always respected. And I'd say maybe even more so in sort of the rush to produce and the rush to finish a thing and get it out into the world in the age of streaming. And, it's like, I hear it too. Like, there's so many documentaries that are being made about NFTs, but the truth is that there's only going to be maybe a small handful of them that actually matter, maybe a small handful, right? And that I tend to think that those are the ones that actually sort of cared about the people that are featured in them. And that are really sort of made with and of the community, rather than sort of like looking at a community, holding it at arm's length, and sort of making sort of very easy criticisms and using sort of the benefits of an editing room to make people look particular ways. I think that that's sort of the end of my speech. I know that my connection's been a bit laggy, so I don't know if you heard all of it, but yeah, I guess that, I've seen quite a bit of media that hasn't been released yet, that's been sent my way, and that this is sort of why I've been thinking about it more recently. Is that, like, there's so much goodness here, and there's so much vibrancy here, and I mean, you hear it from every guest that we've had on this show, and it's very easy to talk about the other things. And it's very easy to sort of perpetuate fear, and sort of speak to the the darker sides of ourselves, especially when you don't understand what's happening in a particular community. It's so easy to ostracize people and just so easy to make them look as if they're sort of one dimensional, you know. And I guess for me, even just as somebody in these communities, it's like working, you know, in this ecosystem, like I hope that we sort of use our wisdom in deciding who we're going to speak with moving forward, in what ways, what access we're giving people, what cameras we're allowing into our rooms. Yeah.
Art itself
Yeah,
is being threatened.
it's interesting. I have lots of mixed thoughts or feelings about that, right? Because on the one hand, like, we have to be really careful about who we let tell our stories and who's telling our story and what their goals or intentions are. And I have frustrations less from like a documentary side, but more recently, and this is a hard one for me to voice. And usually, when I'm not exactly sure how to say something, it comes back to bite me when it's recorded. But what the hell? Why stop now? So it feels like the traditional, from slightly different thing, but similar. It feels like the traditional art world, who kind of weren't into NFTs or the NFT space for the first couple of years, and we're like, well, this isn't art. These aren't real artists. These aren't real art
If you
collectors.
say so.
Have come along and sort of become more comfortable now that they realize this is a larger thing and it's maybe not going to be forgotten or swept under the rug. And I almost worry, and I know it's a slightly different thing, but I almost worry that it's like they're colonizing crypto art or something, like, you know, by wanting to take what so recently happened through blockchain and art and crypto art and fit it into a narrative that conveniently fits the more traditional arc of who gets to pick what matters in art history, right?
That's all part of it.
So
too,
that's
yeah, for sure.
So I mean, that's a sort of a variant, but my point being that, like, there's part of me that's like really paranoid and anxious about who tells the story, because like anyone who's been in this space for a long time, we think it's really special and important. But then there's another part of me, Dan, that like thinks we should have as many people telling the story as possible, and that most of the time when most people tell stories, they get most things wrong, and that's like unavoidable, right? And that I have a hard time sort of reconciling those until I remind myself that all of my faith is put into you at least getting it right. So along with this concern about maybe like who you give your time to in terms of like who's going to tell the story or what their motives are they just trying to cash in, or are they going to paint the story in a light that's not fair, accurate, beneficial in any way? What a great story. Adds additional stress to the folks that want to get it right. It's a hard thing to get right, certainly from a single perspective.
Yeah, maybe that's also sort of what maybe this is a bit selfish to then say it that way. I mean, because I do agree with you, though. There need to be multiple narratives. Like there need to be multiple versions of this story told, especially because the whole nature of it is to this effort towards decentralization, right? So that should absolutely happen at the sort of root of our own lore, right? I guess my hope is that the dozens of people working to sort of make that happen have also sort of that it's a bit more of a dialogue rather with the community that's happening sort of in all of these different places at these different times, rather than this sort of 2020 National Geographic perspective of like, I'm again like we're sort of on the other side of a glass looking in, and this group of people is different than us, and usually that leads to a place of like reductionism, right? So that exactly. Like the dynamics of an entire community or communities interacting and trying to figure something out is sort of then just it can be told and swallowed in 45 minutes, in with commercial breaks, and then you can get it once it's done, and you can feel good because like you get that. So now you can go back to your life.
Yeah, this is art, dude.
Yeah, and in a way, not to get overly nerdy about it, but it is a little bit meta, the conversation, right? In that it sort of mirrors this anxiety that the NFT space, crypto art space, has sort of inadvertently brought up in the last few years, which is, do I put stuff out as fast as possible under the desperation of trying to capitalize on this moment, when people are interested in maybe buying or, paying attention to artists? Or do I work at a pace that makes sense and is thoughtful to try to build something that I'm really proud of and put it out in the world? And I think part of what the last 2 or 3 years did is elevate that conversation in a way that no creative can ignore it anymore, right? There was do I rapid fire put a bunch of stuff out and try to do a bajillion drops and maybe even compromise my principles? Or do I take, quite frankly, the risk that it takes to do something slower and thoughtfully and what feels right, to be the right way? And I think we're getting a mix. What my mom would say, and mom's always right, my mom would say, you can't really control what other people are going to do, but you can control to some degree what you're going to do, right? And
That's right, baby.
people are pretty smart, and they can tell, just sense other people's intentions, and they appreciate, for the most part, good, thoughtful, high quality work. And I don't know, mom's advice always makes me feel a little bit better.
I like your mom's advice.
That is cute.
Sage wisdom. No, I hear that for sure. I guess it's I feel for people because I've seen it too, and I've seen also when it gets messy, and there hasn't been maybe that moment taken to say hey, do I feel as though I know I can go up to this filmmaker when the film is coming out and saying hey, I feel like you messed that up, and feel like they can hear it. Because even me, it's I absolutely, like you're saying, expect to get things wrong. I do not have an expectation that my film will sort of be the only one that's sort of that's not a burden that I'm placing on it at all. But it's almost as if I do expect, and I do hold the responsibility that for the things that I do get wrong, that I'm accessible to the people who lent me their time, the people who made it with me. And that it's my responsibility to hear that with them, and not sort of just leave them there after they've given me their time and just sort of point to the film and be okay, well, that's the thing that I made, and now I'm going back to my life.
Yeah, your story was my story. I used it to my purposes, and I'm done later. Yeah, and I think there is an expectation. I know we sort of met because you invited me to sit for your upcoming documentary, and there is an expectation, I think, sometimes that if you agree to these things, that your values or goal or mission or whatever will somehow be amplified through the documentary, or through, even in lesser cases, if I'm doing a written interview or something, right? And once you've done enough of these things, you almost get used to being sort of disappointed, right? I remember, not that you're going to disappoint, Dan, but I remember
I get it.
When I was 12 or 13, I got this local high school award for painting or something like that, and the local Billerica Minuteman tiny newspaper that no one reads, reporter came over, but that was the biggest moment in my life, right? There's my family unit, right? And some strangers coming to the door to interview us. And I was super anxious and shy about it, but trying to answer best I can, and ready to get the copies of this newspaper and share it with everyone. But I was so freaking nervous. I mean, they could have done a better job too on their side, that the whole thing was we asked Bailey what he thought, and he said, I had no idea. We asked what his work is about. He says, I'm not sure. And we asked, so it was just it was this, such a letdown, right? But you really are, I think what you were getting at in the beginning is you really are putting so much that's dear to you and what you care about in the hands of someone else to amplify and necessarily to tweak, right? There's going to be a bias you're going to bring a bias. And so if I think, not to restate what you've already stated eloquently, but if you're in this space and people come knocking, either now or in the future, when people want to understand it better, and want to interview you in any form, maybe it just makes sense to ask yourself, what's their objective, what bias, because there's always a bias, are they going to bring, and who and how are they going to amplify what I give them, right? Which is something that we even have to be conscious about on the podcast. Like, people are really sticking, kind of putting their necks out there, trusting us to talk to them about these things.
Exactly. And I think that, like, if there is any confusion as to, like, sort of like what any of the rest means, it's also sort of just fundamentally reminding yourself that, like, your story is, like, super, super valuable. And, like, if you're not sharing it with that person, like, that's totally okay. And, like, there are other ways of sharing it if and when you want to, but, like, it's such a valuable thing that, like, is worth taking seriously when somebody asks to hear it. And especially when they're recording it for posterity. So yeah,
I agree.
My thoughts.
I agree, and I'm glad that I get to work with someone who's so thoughtful about this. Speaking of other people trusting us to get it right and do them justice, I think we have some guests at the door, Dan.
Sounds like the McCoys are outside. We better let them in, Bailey. Let's get to it. But first, we got a pre-roll.
Pre-roll.
Bum, 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 bum.
Hey gang, it's Art Gnome. Let's keep it real. Some people just bought NFTs just like they might have bought a fidget spinner or a pet rock. It's not something they take very seriously. But if you're a serious collector like I am, you know there are a lot of tools that are just missing in the space. I spent the last 2 years trying to build tools for serious NFT collectors like me. With a Club NFT subscription, you can find out how much your collection is worth, analyze potential risks, create a local backup, and pin all your IPFS NFTs. That sounds kind of nerdy, but it's pretty important. Don't worry if you don't know what it means, we can help you out. You can also discover new artists based on your past collecting habits. Join thousands of other collectors who took the jump to managing their collection with Club NFT, and don't forget to let me know what you think, because I'd love to hear from you. If you're ready to get serious about collecting, why not try Club NFT? You'll be glad you did.
And welcome back. It is an honor to introduce today's guests on the Dankness. We have Jennifer and Kevin McCoy, the Brooklyn-based maverick art couple who have been producing works together for over 2 decades, which is an achievement in and of itself. According to their site, McCoyspace.com, their mixed media works extend from film and video to installation and generative software. Their work often seeks to situate new technologies within our culture, using contemporary tools and questioning their impact both on the individual and on the collective culture. The McCoys' artwork has been widely exhibited in the US and internationally. Their exhibitions include the Pompidou Center in Paris, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the British Film Institute, South Bank in London, a beautiful theater, the Nevada Art Museum, the San Jose Museum of Art, the Addison Museum of American Art, the Sundance Film Festival, and many other venues in the US, Europe, and Asia. Their work can be seen in the collections of the Museum of Modern Art. Heard of it, Artno? The Metropolitan Museum of Art? That one's pretty well known too. The Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, the Milwaukee Art Museum, the 21C Museum, and the Speed Museum. They received a Creative Capital Award in 2003, the Wired Rave Award for Art in 2005, a Guggenheim Fellowship in 2011, and a Headlands Alumni Award in 2014. Their work is represented by the Postmasters Gallery in New York. In 2022, Kevin received a Webby Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences for co-developing the technology that eventually became as the first NFT. Heard of it? I recently had the opportunity to catch their work, Horror Chase, at the Postmasters Gallery in New York last week, and I was blown away by how ahead of the curve the McCoys have seemed to be for a very long time now. Less recently, I was able to collect some of their new artworks from a recent drop with Art World called Land, Sea, Sky, which I think is an absolutely beautiful drop and definitely worth your time. You can learn more about the McCoys and follow their updates at mccoyspace.com and on Twitter at mccoyspace. I left their bio super long because there is so much to talk about. They are not new to the space, to the scene at all. And we're definitely going to dig into that today with them. Jennifer and Kevin, thank you so much for being here with us.
Great to be here. Are we old new media?
We're old new media.
We're old new media.
I gave this presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I said that in the 90s we were called media artists. In the aughts we were called new media artists. In the teens we were called digital artists, and then now we're called NFT artists. But the perspective has always kind of stayed the same throughout all of that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny.
You can sort of see that, I think, in different ways as you trace the lineage of your work. But I think as one place to start, I guess not to necessarily rehash history in like a linear necessarily storytelling way, but I am curious as to like the lineage of questions you guys have been chasing, and maybe how that's developed through the years, especially maybe as and I don't know, I don't want to presume, but I would suspect the world kind of around you of artists has maybe started asking similar to questions to ones that you've been pursuing for quite some time. So I'm curious if that's sort of a way to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I think that I feel like we usually have a kind of simple approach, a kind of simple algorithm that kind of drives a thing. And it's sort of like take a thing and take another thing and set them next to each other and see what happens. Or take a thing and then do this one thing to the thing and then see what happens, you know? So it's this kind of pretty simple equation, you know, that you try
to find out, I guess, in modern lingo.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. And there's some sort of research and development, and where does, research and development rub up against culture? And to me, there's always something interesting that pops up when there's a new technology where you can talk to people who are super interested in it, and then other people that are afraid of it. And I think that's where you know that there's like a wrinkle in the culture that needs to be ironed out. And sometimes artists are a really great strategy to help just tease out, like, is this a speculation of total doom, or is this freedom? Like, where are we? So I feel like that's kind of where we try to operate, where if you don't engage with it at all, you can't work that out, except in a really oblique way. So I think that's why we keep heading to technology, not to solve any kind of aesthetic problem, but to kind of like figure out where the culture, is not where it's going, but like where people are thinking about how to integrate all of this change into our lives.
This is art. Get it?
Must be disembodied voice. Thank you, disembodied voice.
Kevin, I mean, a lot of people listening may not have seen, like the YouTube video from Rhizome, and what was that, 2014? I guess.
Yeah, 10 years next year.
Wow. To sort of maybe drop in there for a second. I mean, can you talk a bit about what that moment was? What you thought you were doing at that moment?
Yeah. I mean, that moment actually was a culmination, and it was really this time in 2013 that I started to have this kind of peculiar idea. And up into that time, like 2012 is when fall of 2012 is when I really started paying attention to Bitcoin. And for me, the whole story starts with Bitcoin. It starts with Satoshi. It starts with the Bitcoin white paper. And, and then just that kind of struggle to get your head around what was going on, and, with it, and how does it work, and why does it work, and all that kind of stuff. And, for me, it was pretty simple in the sense that once I realized that Satoshi had created a model of digital uniqueness, digital scarcity and digital uniqueness, once that invention was there, then, for me, coming at this from an art, as an artist and as a kind of, digital artist, media artist, whatever, it was pretty. I just had this very, really simple question of like, what if that Bitcoin was an artwork? Like, what if that Bitcoin was an artwork, or what, if how could that artwork be like a Bitcoin? And that was the question that came to my mind really, like, 10 years ago, summer of 2013. And then I was really, just, pretty obsessed. I hate using that word obsessed because it's totally overused, but I was pretty obsessed about it. And but in isolation, it was just like there wasn't really an IRL community. I was trying to do local Bitcoin selling, on the corners, like setting up these meets on the corner to sell Bitcoin because I was trying to meet people, So it was just like
I used to make him bring the dog. Like just
where
bring
would you
the
go?
dog.
What quarters were you on, Kevin?
I was it was in Greenpoint, and go meet at the Dunkin' Donuts in Greenpoint. Did that a few times, and then I slowly realized that it's like, oh, these people are. I hate to use the cliche, but it actually was pretty true. It's like, oh, these people are drug dealers. I probably should stop.
You think?
What a great story.
But it was but anyway, so otherwise it was just sort of this kind of weird isolated thought process, and so. And then, and I talked to Rhizome about it, the digital art organization that hosted the event. And, we've been a part of that organization since the beginning. Jen used to be on the board of it. And, they're really our New York community on the art side, art and technology side. And so, I'd been talking to Michael Connor and Lauren Cornell, who was the director at the time, just casually about this thing I was thinking about, this idea. And Michael had said, "Oh, we'll bring this to 7 on 7. We'll have you come and present this at 7 on 7." And then that was in May of 14. So that became like the opening, right? That was the show. So it was like, okay, that's going to be the show. That's where this is going. And so, it just kind of like, I approached it like any other kind of art exhibition, right? And so there, I met Anil. They paired me up with Anil Dash, and and I said, "Oh, hey, I've got this idea for how to do digital provenance, with a blockchain." And he goes, "Oh, that sounds great. Let's do it. Awesome." And so it was really pretty straightforward, honestly. The the model that I proposed was really straightforward, and we spent most of our time just thinking of what to call it, what to name it, and the whole like kind of thing was just sitting around and laughing about the new top level domain names that would just kind of come out, .bike and all this other kind of stuff. Oh, wow. And we saw .graphics, and we were like, monetized graphics, so that was the eureka moment. It's like, this is monetized graphics. That then became Monograph. So that was the work, was coming up with the name and making it. And then he knew, so I knew that the blockchain, it required zero blockchain programming. And it really was just a conceptual, it was just a conceptual data model that kind of had certain properties to it. And you kind of think through this sort of proof chain, this sort of social proof chain that can make the concept believable, and then the uniqueness comes from the blockchain itself. And then it was just a question of coming up with a name and then making this tool that other people could use that would produce the metadata record that people could, we didn't have any, of course, there's no wallet integration or anything like that. So it was just about kind of the on ramp to the process. And we wrote software and launched software on that first day that did that. And he, knew all about that. I didn't know, I've done, coding in various forms, but I'm not a web developer, and so, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we can use Heroku." And I'm like, "What's Heroku?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, no problem. And we can just do this in PHP and we'll connect the Twitter API and blah, blah, blah." So it's like, what even is awesome. So, blah, 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 so we put this whole presentation together, and he is just like a master communicator. Neil, he's just an awesome dude and a master communicator. So, he put together, we, made this kind of whole kind of presentation. And so it just couldn't have asked for a better platform, right? To kind of, launch this idea, out into the kind of digital art community. And it was cool, I thought it was a cool idea. And I was really super excited that we got the tool up and going and that it was there. And people were like into it, but it was just kind of like, oh, that's cool. And then we were the last people in the evening, and then we went to the after party, and, it was not like this parting of the seas or something happened.
Except for that one guy. Do you remember that one guy who
Yeah,
stood
one
up
guy.
in the
Yeah, right
audience?
at the very.
I don't know if it's on the YouTube video.
It is. It's at the very tail end of the
Yeah,
video.
you could hear this guy going, "Do you realize what has just happened?"
Yeah,
And
one
he's
guy
just
got
like,
it. He goes,
"Wait
I've
a
been
minute."
looking at this stuff for a long time. And he goes, and I want you to know, we just saw something important here.
Oh, wow.
So it's like,
so there's one guy in the
one
room.
guy, hats off to that guy.
I love that. So and so Jen, I love what you said earlier though about sort of like leaning into the fear, sort of like this projected fear of tech, right? And sort of like bringing it back there. And I mean, for me, I'm sort of all about trying to humanize what's happening here, no matter how sort of tech it gets, right? And I guess in that, after that experience, this sort of launch happens in this room, and there's one guy in that room that's like, do you realize, do you understand what happened? What has it been like to sort of be working in this space and then sort of see the tidal wave from that moment that is sort of more or less apathetic grow to something that is like reached a fever pitch in all directions, right? Like now there's an incredible amount of fear and all of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first you see that the slow like bubbling of the potential, like I bought Kevin a t-shirt that said, "Ask me about blockchain technology," because I kept like finding him at parties, like sitting in the back with like a wrapped group of artists. Because, coming from digital art, sure, we love experimentation, and we've had, there's been opportunities with many digital curators and museums that you have named. But I do think for like a burgeoning group of people who knew a lot about making images with software in this digitally native way, they hadn't had a way to figure out how to make a living. And so there were people just like eventually, like after Ethereum and, OpenSea and Foundation and everybody else popped up, who were just like, dude, thank you. I have been able to pay my mortgage, buy a skateboard, like whatever level that they're at. Woohoo! But then, all the scams and things like that are also part of that. But, my reaction is we're from the art world. We're used to bubble economies based on almost nothing. And that is, the date that we came in with. So it's not like shockingly surprising that like excitement can be generated by, hype and also substance and meaning, and that figuring out how to untangle that hairball is, what we're trained to do, as artists and curators and art professionals. You don't always guess right. But, we're not here to be people's financial advisors. We're just trying to make interesting work. And so, in a way, it's awesomely appealing that, now the people who are talking about it are pretty much talking about how to make interesting work and how to keep working rather than how to like be a billionaire. Which,
This is art,
whatever.
dude. Duh.
Duh.
Yeah. Duh.
I like that I talk to the sound effects.
Art, no, I want to turn it to you because the McCoys are film people, and I have an endless list of questions that I could get into that could get very, very granular with them quick. So,
yeah, no, I think, and I hope it goes that direction too. I will throw my art nerd card on the table too. So I'm of the same vintage where I went to grad school for new media. And I think, being from that generation, there's something like unique and awesome, the sort of the Joshua Davises and the Leahs and the Casey Reeses. And I actually didn't learn about the McCoys from NFTs and sort of, that side. It was in grad school in 2007 or 8, I think, studying new media, and their work in some ways, and I can kind of appreciate this and kind of not, like they were fairly well known within a subset of media nerds and artists, media artists, is fair to say, yeah. And now super well known, but for a different thing. If you're a media nerd like me, like a 3-decade media nerd, like they're known more for taking films and breaking them up and sort of re-bringing them back together as like, exploring databases and these technologies and like, even in prep for this, I'm like, oh, I should go, check what it says about them online. And it mentions like Lev Manovich, who was like the god back then that gave us the foundation through which to understand media. Right. So I was having flashbacks to like grad school and thinking like, well, in a way, it's great that they've got this attention, right, for NFTs and, things have become so popular. But in another way, it has to be, and I'll pose this more as a question, it has to be sort of frustrating, too, that you become sort of one-dimensional when the bulk of your work to people that are in the space that knew you before, this is really just one small part of it. And
totally.
I don't think that that's unique to the two of you either. Maybe, as someone who's been known to be a cheerleader for NFTs for the last 5 years, one of the things that I lament, right, is that maybe we see that universally, that people have been kind of narrowed down to like whatever the latest drop is or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I would love to hear how that feels, to have one small aspect be the thing that people seem to identify with, even if it's not necessarily, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, the thing that you identify yourselves with being the most representative of your work.
No, I mean, absolutely. It's totally true. And also it's like, as I kind of recounted in my story a second ago, it was 10 years ago, right? It was like, it was a long time ago that I was like massively, obsessed with this idea and all the ins and outs of it, which isn't to say I'm not interested now or moved on, whatever, but it's like, it's like your creative attention floats around and there's, different things that you're interested in and you kind of, do projects and then move on from those projects, but then it is certainly, it is certainly strange to have, quantum be the kind of tail that wags the whole dog, and it's weird in a couple of ways. I mean, I'm super proud of that work. Don't get me wrong. It's like fantastic. I love that image. I love the kind of the story and, I'm really proud of what it is. But, that's certainly not our style. This kind of like abstract generative thing is not a style that we've really been kind of working with. And our whole practice is a collaborative practice. And there was this one weird idea, that became kind of my idea. And that's been, challenging to navigate in the, in the kind of, in this sort of latter day hype cycle that it's like, oh no, the whole journey has been Jennifer and Kevin McCoy. And there's this kind of this, one weird trick, kind of moment, with surrounding, kind of the monograph concept and quantum, so, but it also at the same time, it's like we just kind of do our work. We're kind of like interested in our ideas and we pursue them. And, sometimes work is good and sometimes work is bad, so I guess my point is we're not dwelling on, kind of these various pitfalls or complaints or something like that.
Yeah. And I don't know.
The work goes on.
We know a lot of people in this town. And I feel like for every person who's like, I heard you did a thing, I just wait until I understand who they are and what they're talking about, because for every one of those people who are like NFTs, oh my God, there's another person who's like, oh yeah, I just saw that, you guys did something with the Whitney. Tell me about what's an NFT again, because there are painter friends that we've known forever. Or, I'm a painter. Should I do NFTs? What's going on? So I do think that we get used to people who are basically living online. And then we forget that there's like a massive chunk that just really don't care about that and are like, tell me about what your drawing practice is this week or whatever the other projects we're doing, because we've made 3 films in between the time that quantum happened, and so there's that as well.
Which work do you most like talking about or sort of talk about least? Because I mean, on my list again, I saw Horror Chase and like it's a brilliant work. I think for anybody who like lives in New York City, if you can still catch it at the gallery, very, very worth checking out. It's terrifying, and the more you hang with it, the more anxious you start feeling. But yeah, I mean, I want to open it up, and if there is something else,
that piece is really designed for prolonged viewing. I mean, well, I guess, or thinking about that, this is something we thought explicitly about, sort of early on with sort of like, interactive work, to use that term lightly, including installation or, directly interactive works or whatever. It was like, what in the piece can appeal in this short time frame? What can the piece say in this very short time frame? What can the piece say in this kind of middle time frame? And what can the piece say in the long time frame? And just imagining the viewer in these different modes, in these kind of different time modes. What can you speak to them in that way? And Horror Chase totally works, at this. I think at all of those at all of those levels, and so the piece was dates from 2002 is when we first showed it. And it's alive.
I was shocked, by the way. Like after I saw it, and then I looked at the thing, or I had the paper, and then I looked, and then I was like, "Wait, what? Wait, what?
Yeah,
like, no
it's a
way."
live. Yeah, it's a live edit, right? So it's an algorithmic edit of footage that we shot on 16 millimeter film, and then we re-engineered it, rebuilt it, for this current exhibition. And so that meant that we went back to the original 16 millimeter film, and we had it laser scanned, which is like 24 hours. It's like nothing, right? You just go to this Bushwick and they give them the film, and they get the next day, here's your 50 gigabyte file of ProRes, blah, blah, blah. And, and then it's there. You have this 4K thing, and it's like, from the film, it's totally beautiful. And then we have a bunch of friends in the film industry, and a friend we know he's a color corrector, a colorist guy. And we went over to his studio, and I dub up the color correction, so it just looks totally awesome. And, and then rewriting the software. And, in 2002, it was written using Director. It was written in Lingo, and, it's a live edit. So, you couldn't stream it off the disk, and everything had to be in RAM. And we had the frames were 320 pixels by 240 pixels was the size back then. And we could fit in 4 takes, 4 different kind of runs of the actor through the space. And that was it. Right. And so now we have these 4K frames, and it's just like effortless to have I rewrote it in Python, whatever. It was just this, and it's just effortless to kind of and we streamed all of it. We included more takes from the original. And so it was just so fun to see the piece just come to life in this way that it never had been before.
Mm-hmm.
It just really looked good, and it was really enjoyable and satisfying to see it.
Well, and the NFTs have opened up the conversation about software-driven work. And so what's so cool about standing around at that opening was that people who would not have understood what an algorithm is, or what algorithmic playback of files could be, or software-driven art could be, for the last 20 years, I feel like they've been like, oh, cool, but they had no idea what was really happening. But we had a, friend who's a lawyer, and she was like, oh, so how did this used to play back? What, was it just a video? And I was like, no, the algorithm is from 20 years ago as well. And she was like, what? What do you mean that was possible? And I was like, just barely, but yes. And so I just loved that conversation, and it just sort of shows why, you just have to keep talking about ideas, because it's one thing for 2 people to have a conversation where we all know what's happening. And it's another thing for an entire culture to go, oh, here's the possibilities of what, computers add to cinema in this case,
Well, and it's an approach to generative, nowadays, you say generative, and, and Art Blocks has kind of, pioneered a certain concept of generative. And, that approach goes back to, P5 and goes back to processing and all that kind of stuff, but it's, it's generative in this kind of line and graphic kind of way, there's a kind of feel to a lot of it, and this is photographs, these are video. This is cinematic, cinema meets algorithm. And, and that's not, people don't often think about that in a kind of generative context, this kind of dynamic live edit,
or filmic context, frankly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of wedges itself out of all categories that people generally speak of.
It was a category that had a lot of traction in the early aughts. There was a bunch of artists, and a bunch of big name artists, doing kind of film based work, cinema based work, engaging that in a kind of art capacity. Douglas Gordon and Pierre Huyghe and Candice Brights and I don't know who else, Jen.
Paul Pfeiffer.
On the list. Oh, Paul Pfeiffer, of course.
Maybe Bjorn. Yeah.
Art.
Art it is.
Yeah, and so where it was this kind of like art plus film, kind of rubric, and that the sun is set on that kind of period, and those artists continue to make good work and whatever. But it was interesting for us to kind of in showing it again, and now just seeing the legibility of it to the audience, people's familiarity with film and with film language and with watching film and having that as a kind of background set of experiences that they then bring to watching our piece. Our piece sits on top of the history of film in a way, and I think, the piece is all about genre. I mean, here we're talking about this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and just to describe it, it's this endless chase sequence of this guy running through this tight cabin with the camera chasing him, and sometimes it flips backwards and he's chasing you, and it's this kind of endless back and forth permutation of this guy running through this cabin, and it's styled after a chase sequence from Sam Raimi's film Evil Dead 2. And we rebuilt, kind of carefully mapped out the set by watching it kind of frame by frame, and then rebuilt it on a soundstage when we were young and energetic, and thought this will be great.
We could do this.
Build it. We could do this. And so so the piece is a genre piece. It's about this kind of horror genre, kind of distilled down to this essence, like horror equals chase. Is kind of the implied algorithm of the title. But in the end, it's just really enjoyable to watch. It's just constantly changing, constantly staying the same, and you're just locked in this kind of claustrophobic space, but there's hints of kind of comedy in the performance, and kind of absurdity, so I don't know, it kind of captures it. It's like the piece, it's one of those times where it all kind of came together, the stars aligned, and you're like, yeah. But so that's why it was so great to revisit it and kind of do this big blow up, and so we couldn't have been happier with the whole.
I must warn you, things.
Yeah, it looks great. The actual gallery itself too is
yeah, good fit, right?
It's screened pretty big. But to some, like, you might be sort of caught in this sort of Cassandra-esque hamster wheel too, in a way. And you've been making art for decades, and I guess like for artists that are sort of like listening to our conversation right now, and for myself, I guess I'm curious as to like if this is something conscious that you practice, or if this is something that you can articulate at all. But how you sort of keep an authentic curiosity about things, like how you sort of really allow yourself to stay liberated in wandering into like whatever land you kind of find yourself in.
No, that's a great question, and it's it's kind of the critical question, for artists. In some ways that's the only question. How do you keep going, right? And the answer is like, don't stop, right? That's the answer. Is don't stop. Just keep going. But at the kind of practical level, and especially living in a place like New York City, where it's very challenging to live here, at a material level, it has many, many rewards, but it is a crusher to live here. And I'll never forget, with somebody that gave us this advice 25 years ago, and she said, control your living expenses. Be able to get into some kind of a situation where you can control your living expenses, and that usually here that means rent. That means rent. However, there's a billion different angles. But like control your living expenses, and and keep those expenses low. And and if that means have a day job or something like that to kind of like cover it, but like have that kind of living expense. It's such a basic kind of it's like make your bed, and it's like control your living expenses. But honestly, that's that's super critical. And then but on the kind of art side of it, on the making side of it, you can't count on anything, right? You can't count on exhibitions or sales or shows or momentum or whatever. You can build a circle of friends, and you can make art with your friends and kind of for your friends and for your immediate community and for feedback in that kind of tight loop. And that can happen now in virtual ways, that are much more robust than, kind of when we were getting started. But that's it. It's like you don't stop, keep looking, and keep making stuff for your friends, and then just keep going. And artists are always, the job of the artist is to look out at the landscape. That's what artists do. Portraiture and landscape, right? It's like looking and then making something that reports back about that act of looking. That's it. So now, of course, those landscapes are virtual, they're digital, they're disembodied, they're kind of hybrid, physical, digital. It's like there's just, the details of the world around us are so freaking odd, that there's a lot to look at. But in the end, it's still this kind of landscape or portraiture reportage, and it's like, just do it.
I mean, you guys are kind of like outliers, like twice or thrice over, in that making art's super hard, right? So like the hundreds of people I went to art school, like, I don't know, 5% of them still make work, right? Staying married is kind of hard, right? Like, I don't know, divorce is like 50%, right? Right.
Yeah.
Making art with your spouse over decades, like makes you, I think, maybe one of a kind. There's like the Eames or whatever, I'm trying to think of like historical examples, right? So yeah, what is that like? Like my wife's in the room next door, and like any married couple, we've been together. Neither of us remember the exact year, so I won't get in trouble for this, but I think it's like 17 years. And like you have the joyous moments, but every day also has the small negotiations around like who's going to unload the dishwasher, right? So when you're having these bold, exciting moments where you're trying to make art together, but someone has to clean the bathtub or whatever, like how do you vacillate back and forth between those conversations and stay excited and work together this many years?
I mean, I do think that like having art as a constant conversation, or our projects as a conversation, is good. I mean, there's just a limit as how pissed off you can be when there's like a deadline looming and things have to get kind of solved. So you learn like a lot of communication and collaboration skills. I think that's part of it. And also, it's like there's sort of fits and starts. We work fairly project based, and so things can be like hairy for a month or two, and then you pop up and solve all your problems and clean under the refrigerator a little bit and start over again. So I mean, that's one reason I kind of like film that process of just like bursts of energy. You're doing a shoot and then you're editing, and the kind of workflow changes, and that I think keeps everything a little bit fresh. And it's also possibly why our projects are spanning so many different kinds of things, is that also is a way to like keep introducing new people into the studio and new ideas that can kind of sustain it that way. Also, my short answer to that is like you both have to quit at the same time, and no one's wanted to quit at the same time. Like if I want to quit one day, Kevin's like, no, it'll be great. And when he wants to quit, I'm like, oh, let's just do one more thing. So there's a lot of mutual approval for taking risks, Like, I think this is bullshit. This looks like nothing. And the other person's like, well, yeah, but there's some really interesting aspects to it. Let's not shelve that right so quick. And I think that is really interesting, even for artists who don't collaborate, but are sort of in the same circle. Like I've read that about Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, that it was like mutual support for taking risks that sort of help both artists kind of like, get to the studio every day. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, and it's like and I think this is a danger in the NFT world, because it's such an online, very online world, and it's like your work does not get made in fucking Discord room. It does not get made on Twitter. Okay, maybe you've got some magic Twitter algorithm that's pulling it in and you're doing this kind of text collage, but I doubt it. So it's like, put your fucking phone down and start working. Do your work, and your work isn't like a conversation that's advanced. It's like, no, it's like you're trying to figure out some sort of question and you're trying to like pose this answer to it, and maybe you don't know what the question is, so it's like you're just kind of fucking around, messing around. But it's just like, you need to push that world away, even if your work is all about digging, going right up the, to the hilt of this kind of, kind of virtual, world that we're in. It's like, you got to turn that off to make your work. You have to work. And, so, you have to be willing to kind of be a hermit, and kind of hunker down and
you will take art,
do some stuff, art. And it's like, and this is what I love about art making. It's like, it's not, art really, so often art sells itself short, it kind of like, oh, it's a brand partnership, it's like, oh, it's a collab with a blah, 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 like, oh, this, or I'm just so, happy to be, thank you for bequeathing this honor to me to like, say my thing. It's like, yeah, no, you're like at a kind of like basic, you're at this kind of like life and death, blood and guts level of, human expression. And it's not about kind of papering over some, I don't know, whatever brand partnership or relationship. God bless all the brand partnerships. Knock yourself out. Love them. But it's like, come on, don't fool yourself that that's what you're doing, what your art making is. It's different. And that's what, art's stuck around since the dawn of humanity, because it's actually doing something different. So give yourself the space to find out and experience directly what that other thing is and figure out how to put that in your work. That's like,
what is happening? I love that. And I think it's sort of telling that your bio, I believe, on your site, actually it's not Kevin's bio and Jen's bio, or Jen's bio and it's kind of like your bio as a team, right? Which, I mean, I have seen other art couples, right, where it's like, can we all just take a moment and acknowledge that artists generally, you have to have a pretty big ego to survive, right? So, and I think often it's like you're fighting the impulse that people aren't caring enough and like, push forward. So I think there's something telling about seeing your bio as a team rather than sort of individual bios that's comforting, I guess, or reassuring, or kind of unique, and maybe speaks to it.
You're making a third body of work. It's like there's this new thing that is different than what you would do on your own, or what the other person would do on their own, and it's like it's a third body of work, and so that only could happen this way, and you have to believe in that and kind of commit to that.
Before we head to the next segment, I do want to know, what it is that you're working on now, how much you can tell us about that. Again, like the drop that recently happened, I guess it was a few months ago with Art World now, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And
I love that project. So we're doing a couple of things. That work came together fairly quickly, and
yes and no. We had set the basis for it for a while.
Yeah. But I just meant that we started on it in a fairly digital mode, with a few experiments on paper. So we have a residency coming up in July, and we're sort of challenging ourselves to like revisit, some of the compositional strategies and collage strategies of Land, Sea, Sky, but do those in sort of offline spaces like collages and drawings and paintings. So that's what we're up to in the studio residency, and we're putting together a body of work to show in Berlin in September, which hopefully this will be the driving force of. Or we'll get to Maine and it'll just change completely and we'll do something else. But that's the strategy, is to kind of I think one thing that was really useful when we started showing with the gallery is that they were like, okay, well, you think that you understand this material and this strategy, but what if you made like, a whole show of these, one-offs that you just experimented with, and to just sort of slow it down and to kind of explore it more fully. So given that we loved, that drop, and we, had so much fun talking to people who participated with it in different ways. We just wanted to extend that back into the studio and see what else we can do with that, with the underlying themes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I cannot wait to see more. Art Gnome, you know what sound that is? You know what that means?
I get it wrong. It's a 50-50 chance that I would get this right, Dan, but I get it wrong.
I ask you
time.
every time.
It's either a pre-roll or 20 questions. I'm gonna say it's a pre-roll.
Well,
That's
both,
20 questions.
Really.
Oh, okay, it's both.
It's 22 questions, but first we have a pre-roll.
All right, fair.
Song and dance, last McCoy room play.
Complete examination. McCoy's waiting.
In a world where digital art has been historically undervalued, one film is here to set the record straight. Featuring over 100 artists, collectors, and developers, each an important voice in the NFT community, partially funded with the cutest NFT project you've ever seen, Depop Studios presents I'm New Here. Learn more and mint your newbie today at newhere.xyz.
Okay. All right. So now for everybody's favorite segment, 22-ish questions, where we ask somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 random questions to our guests in an attempt to understand them in maybe a different way than you normally get to hear about them from more traditional interviews. The rules, well, there aren't really any rules, but if there are any questions that you don't want to answer, just tell us, I don't want to answer that, or we can come back to it. Dan was mentioning during the break, this is our first time doing 22 questions with two people. So we have provided no guidance on how to manage this task. It will just happen in real time. Zero guidance. And it will happen, or we'll kick it off with question number 1, which is, what did you eat for breakfast?
Fruit salad.
Scrambled eggs.
I was worried there for a second, Dan. I have to before we get to 2.
And
we always have some form of eggs. And when you said fruit salad, this was going to be the first episode with no eggs.
Oh.
So I am glad.
I almost missed it.
We got eggs in there as well.
To be clear, Kevin also made me eggs, so I actually ate both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so
as long
nice.
as there's eggs in there. All right. Sorry, Dan. Go
ahead.
Go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Fun for the two of you, actually.
Oh, I was going to say we were too late for breakfast burritos at our deli down the street because it was after 10. And we were like, oh, shit. So I went home and made kind of like makeshift breakfast burritos.
Were they better or worse
like
than the ones down the street?
It was very basic. It was no, the ones, come on, you go to the deli, it's like, they're going to give you a whole like.
Yeah, we live in Greenpoint. It's the home of artisanal burritos.
Yeah, exactly. Now it is.
And waste sanitation.
Eggs. Question number 2 is going to be good. Describe the state of your bed right now.
Oh,
it's
rumpled.
It's semi-made.
Oh no, it's really
rumpled,
made.
But not...
No, it's super made right now. It's like good. Lovely.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Today is our twice weekly
totally
home domestication intervention day.
Oh, so like this is the day.
This is the day. Yeah,
it's cleaned up.
This is the one.
Oh wow, catching you on a good day, fed from breakfast with made bed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, does domestic day change week to week, or do you have it on a calendar? It's like
Tuesday, every other Tuesday.
Every other Tuesday.
Okay, I like that.
Yep.
Boom.
That's rare.
Oh, that's my turn, right, Dan? Sorry, I was still thinking about domestic day.
I was
all
thinking
right.
Domestic intervention day.
Pencil or domestic intervention day. Yeah, I'm gonna try to introduce that.
DID
did. First, you invent the NFT, and then you invent domestic intervention day. Which one will have a larger impact on the world is yet to be seen. We shall see.
We know.
Please calm down.
Pencil or pen, and preferred brand.
Sharpie pen for me. Love. American made. Yes.
I do like I do like pencil. I do like pencil.
Kevin's got his $9 pencils from the art supply store.
Yeah, I've got a number of pencils here to choose from. This one is a Kimberly. It's a good pencil.
That's a pretty pencil.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of pencils here. A bunch of pens too. There's plenty of pens.
$9 pencil.
I don't think it's $9 pencil. Maybe.
You could buy a lot
this
of
one's
Sharpies
good too. Blackwing.
$9.
This is the Blackwing. That's the totally insane pencil. That's
it looks nice.
Yeah, that's an awesome.
That is a really nice
Blackwing.
Didn't they fund the Iraq War? Oh, that's black.
That's Black Rock.
That's Black Rock.
Isn't it?
Black Rock or black the
Blackstone?
The private military contract.
Yeah,
that's why it costs
pencils.
That's why it costs $9.
Yeah,
right? You can't fund a war on 50-cent pencils.
It's like John Wick. They just go after people with pencils.
Yeah, it's a John Wick pencil.
They're attracted to dank places.
How old were you when you received your first computer?
I was in the 10th grade of high school. And it was an Apple IIe. Well, I didn't receive it. The family got one.
Must be a fairly...
For me, my first computer wasn't even a computer. It was a printer that had a 3-page memory. It was like Brother, and it was a typewriter.
It was a typewriter. It was a typewriter.
Yeah, it was a typewriter.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and a printer with a 3-page memory. Yeah.
Interesting that none of those typewriter companies really made it, as like the primary PC companies, or like Xerox for that matter, for all the things they invented, right?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
It's true. Favorite writer, author, or speaker? I guess you can pick one or touch on all three. Yeah.
I want to see Kevin's head explode with this question.
Yeah, we go straight from what you have for breakfast to who's your favorite writer, author,
Gotta
speaker.
Mix it up.
I'm
gonna say, well, just go ahead. You go.
I'm gonna claim J.G. Ballard.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was a good one. And I'm gonna maybe related. I'm gonna say William Burroughs because of when I was reading him and the kind of like pivotal time and kind of his role in my mind at that kind of pivotal time. William Burroughs and J.G. Ballard. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there's a long list, but those are good. Those are good.
What's your favorite arcade game?
That's a great question.
Arcade game?
Question.
Centipede for me.
Arcade game. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Thank you. That was quick. Jeez,
so Defender was one, but then it was another one that my friends and I were just nuts about, and that was Crazy Climber. But it's a pretty niche one, but we played Crazy Climber a lot. So Defender or Crazy Climber.
Old school, I like it. That's my vibe.
Yeah,
my vibe. Favorite pizza topping, least favorite pizza topping?
Really important.
I am a fan of the Hawaiian pizza. I'm not going to say that's my favorite, but it's in such a kind of like political and polemical stance, yes or
divisive.
No. I am in the yes category of the pineapple, on the pizza.
The ham and pineapple combo.
I like a little fried eggplant.
That's cool.
I don't have that often, but I really like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I'm mixed about. Oh yeah, least favorite. I mean, I'm an anchovy person. I've got no problem with anchovies, for example. But I'm kind of hit and miss on the white pizza.
Me too. That's disgusting.
And clam. It's just like
No white pizza.
Yeah, it's a bit bland.
Well,
right?
art is subjective.
No white pizzas in the McCoy household.
No.
What is or was your favorite animated series? Favorite cartoon?
I still have to go with The Simpsons.
Watched all that?
Nope.
It doesn't disappoint.
It's a solid choice.
I mean,
solid.
I mean, I grew up with Looney Tunes cartoons reruns, so that was the default reference, kind of coming out of youngest childhood, and so yeah, I'll stick with Looney Tunes.
Stella is scrambling through his soundboard right now. He's like, "This is my moment."
Yeah, exactly. Quick, where's the dope?
All right, we're on from cartoon 2. One vice you will openly admit.
Vice.
My cuticles are always a mess. Cuticle picking.
My wife does that too.
Yeah.
My default sleep in. It's like I could easily sleep till 9:30. Get up, 9:30, 10.
That's why you missed burritos this morning.
Exactly. Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Repercussions.
The early to bed, early to rise is not happening.
An often overlooked aspect of your personality is. This is going to be good.
I'm actually quite sensitive.
That's right, baby.
You can answer for each other too. Actually, we could spin it.
I don't know. God, overlook aspect of your personality. I don't know. That seems hazardous to like.
I was gonna say
for the other person.
I opened the door.
You haven't been married long enough, Dan, to know that you actually can't turn that question around.
I just don't think I don't think Kevin's able to hide anything.
Why is nobody seeing?
I do get angry on occasion, and
it's terrifying to all
takes a
of
lot.
us. Everyone's terrified.
It takes a lot.
The kids are like, woo!
But I can get there.
Here, so cute.
That
is cute.
Yeah, it is cute. It is cute.
I am incredibly.
See how cute it is.
Yeah, this is so cute. I am incredibly impatient. I don't think I hide it very well, but my attention span is like 2 seconds.
That's me, especially living in New York more and more. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? You got to go, move.
Yeah.
I'm really territorial about the sidewalk now.
Wow.
Yeah, it might be a phase. I hope it's not a phase. Anyway, this isn't about me.
True New Yorkers. This is why I stay out in the country.
Oh, that's nice.
Favorite era of art?
Early modern. 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. There was a lot of grounding.
Who are you thinking of?
Teens to 20s. Maybe let's push it back. Teens, 20s. European modernism. That's the date that brought us.
I'm gonna go forward. I'm gonna go forward. I think late 50s, early 60s. I'll go there. Like Fluxus, all the things that I like.
Oh yeah. Sure. All the things. Well, and that captures, the real kind of high point of experimental filmmaking, which is, pretty important reference point.
Absolutely.
And arguably the birth of digital art, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. For all the right reasons.
Good choices.
If you could change one thing about your neighborhood, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. A little bit better subway connection. I don't mind the G train, but a little bit better subway connection would be.
The G is tough.
Nice.
Yeah, the G is.
It's gotten much better, but we're a ways off the G, so I guess our specific transit hookup.
Mm-hmm. I would go with less aluminum siding, but that's happening.
Oh, is there's more aluminum siding coming in?
No, I just
no.
Being stripped
less.
off
It's less.
by house.
It's slowly going away.
Yeah, it's delightful to see that.
I like it. A piece of art that you don't own but would love to, and it can be anything, like throughout history.
Jesus.
Something without aluminum siding.
Ooh, I know. I would like to have a Wilhelm Hammershøi painting.
Oh wow, yeah, we were just looking
from
at
like
those.
1900, turn of the century. They're just these like beautifully lit, like barren interiors. I think it would be very restful to have that.
Yeah, those are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my God, I can't. My mind is blanking.
Well, while you're thinking, Kevin, Jen, can you say the artist's name again?
Oh.
Because it wasn't an artist that I was familiar with.
Wilhelm Hammershøi.
Okay, Wilhelm.
Kind of 1890s, turn of the century,
Yeah.
Danish, right?
Danish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
H-A-M-M-E-R.
Forget about
It's
it.
good stuff. I think there was one at auction
They're
in May, and I didn't see what it went for, but I'm imagining it was a lot. And I don't think there's that many either.
Yeah. I'm going to say, just because I saw these a couple weeks ago and they just were so amazing, these Helen Frankenthalers at Gagosian were just totally amazing.
Yeah, those
beautiful.
Are nice.
Really beautiful. The Helmholtz Klimt ones at Guggenheim last year, that was totally incredible.
Yeah, those chef's kiss.
You know, there's a long list.
I'm going to leave this. You can choose actually which question you want to answer, but you can either give us the first website that you remember or your first psychedelic experience.
Well, it was the same thing. No,
that's why they're paired.
Jen had a very early website experience.
Yeah,
because we were doing grad school up at Rensselaer Polytechnic in the early 90s.
Someone
Mosaic.
in the library was like, "Do you want to see?" Because we had been using Elm for email, which is like type VI and write something in command line email.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "This is so stupid. We're all in the same grad program. Why can't you just like put like a note on the desk instead of like having to all log in at the computer on that desk?" Slowly, like even over the course of the year, we could do it from home, and it was like made a little more sense. But somebody in the library, because I was working for a dean, was like, "Look at this," and it was Mosaic with images, and I was like, "Oh, this is insane. You mean everyone can see this, and I just have to type in words, and this page comes out?" So yeah, that was pretty unbelievably
Very psychedelic.
Yeah, it was nuts.
The internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't see it. She came home and was telling me about it, and I was just like, wow, that sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And the psychedelic experience, I guess I'll take that one. When I was 19 years old, and on the summer between freshman and sophomore year, with my kind of friends from high school, and it was unforgettable, totally unforgettable.
This is an interesting one. We at times have thought of taking it out, but I think a remarkable amount of people have had psychedelic experiences, like way more than you would think until you start asking, and it's like super high hit rate, So
that's right, baby.
Yeah, we keep this one in. Yeah, but I guess it's also artists mostly, so like maybe that's a subset.
Yeah, our demographic is a bit narrow.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, Dan. That's fair. So if you could live anywhere, where would you want to live?
We met in Paris, France, and have a special collection with that city. But that's number 2, or maybe even number 3. I come from Seattle, which is a wonderful place, beautiful place. But honestly, New York City. I love living in New York City.
Yeah, I was going to say Gramercy Park. It's like right there. But I think it would be
Park.
You'd have a key.
You
finally have a key.
I want the
to get
key.
inside that park.
It's so convenient to everything.
There's a Sex in the City episode you can watch, I'm sure, and live that vicariously.
It's fine.
Read my lips. No.
What is an experience that you've had with a collector that's been particularly impactful?
That is interesting.
Well, there's a good one and a bad one. The good one was the one where you're just like, holy shit. When we were showing, this was 2004, we were showing it's our second show at Postmasters. We had just come up with this idea of miniature cameras over these dioramas of a kind of miniature film set. This is after Horror Chase. So remember Horror Chase? We built this whole film set, shot it on film, had to dismantle it completely to get out of the space before we even got the footage back from the lab, and which was nerve wracking. And we were just like, how do we bring this? The space was just so cool, the whole space, and the physicality of it, whatever. It's like, how do we bring that into the gallery? And so, coming off of Horror Chase, we had this idea of like miniature cameras, kind of dollhouse style miniatures, and edit those together in real time to make these kind of simple films. And one of the first ones we did on that was a piece called Our Second Date, which was a kind of sort of documentary thing. Our second date, as I said, we met in Paris, was going to see Jean-Luc Godard's film Weekend. So we made that in miniature. We built the traffic jam scene, the kind of long, kind of traffic jam scene.
That shot is one of the best shots in cinema.
So great, right? As this kind of miniature turntable, and then this kind of reverse shot of us, in miniature, kind of, in this like hilarious little kind of dolls, kind of watching that in this kind of film theater. Very primitive, but it worked. In walks the actor Bill Paxton, walking by Chelsea, and he just looked he was looking around, and he kind of looks at it, and he's just like, oh, and within 5 minutes he bought the piece. He's just like, I want to buy this. And he eventually installed it in his agent's office in Beverly Hills, which we installed for him at his office. It was totally insane, totally hilarious.
America's dad, Bill Paxton.
I know. What a guy. Such a nice guy.
He's an awesome guy. That piece eventually got donated to the Nevada Art Museum. So that came from Bill Paxton. He and his father were big collectors. So that's a great one. Some some bad ones. You just hear.
I have a bad one that's
so odd.
I was at
rich people,
a booth at the Armory, and our art dealer was there. We had a piece on the wall, and she was talking to this woman, and I was coming up behind them, and I hear the dealer say to the collector, "Oh, the artist is here. Would you like to meet her?" And the woman turns around and looks me up and down, and then turns back to the dealer and says, "No, thank you." I'm like, I can hear you. I'm right here. So fabulous.
Brutal.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, sorry? I was getting so engrossed in the story that I forgot.
I love when you're getting raptured in the story.
I'm like, Bill Paxton, and then I'm like, no,
I see it on your face.
I'm like, oh no, she didn't say that. Oh wait, I'm still here and have to say things. Okay, let's see.
Can I tell you one more Bill Paxton story?
Yeah, please do.
Because he would call us up sometimes. He'd call us, "Hey, this is Bill. Hey, listen, I'm doing this great show. I'm doing this show with HBO. It's going to be great, And I've been talking to the producers, and I really want you guys to do the credit sequence. I really want to think you could do, like you did for the piece. You could do that as the credit sequence for this thing." And it was one of those things where we eventually got on a call with the producer, and the producer's like, "Have you ever done anything like this before? Like, made any credit sequence?" We're like, "No, but we have some ideas. It could be this, could be that, like blah blah blah." And it was clear that it was just like he was kind of humoring the star, and kind of whatever. But this is for Big Love. The series was Big Love, and he was, later it was clear that's what that was for. I can't say that we were close to doing it or like whatever. I'm sure it was just sort of
but I just saw another HBO show that literally looks like our miniatures. It's of the whole like character thing done in miniatures for their credit sequence. So they eventually did it. It's for Dead Ringers. They did a show of Dead Ringers, based on the Cronenberg film.
Yeah, the Rachel Weisz series.
Yeah, the beginning looks a lot like our miniatures.
I got to see that.
I'll show you.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's
breaking news on the Dankness.
Go back to your questions.
We've been robbed.
Sorry, I'm back. Who is someone that you've never met but would like to meet? I mean, you've already met Bill Paxton, so I mean, who is there after that?
We haven't met but would like to meet. I don't know. What do you think? Do you have a name on that? It's like, I don't want to meet anybody. Leave me alone.
I would like to meet Andrea Fraser. I think you've met her, but I've never met her.
Oh, I met her. Yeah, she was intense.
Yeah, I can imagine.
She is intense. Yeah, I don't know. That's I don't have.
Living or dead?
It's funny because living
if it makes
or dead.
it easier, we can go living or dead.
Yeah,
living or dead for sure.
Yeah. Well,
I prefer meeting dead people, just less challenge,
Yeah. I'll go back to my William Burroughs kind of thing, and I missed a chance to attend a reading of his way back in the day that I do think would have been really, really kind of cool. It would have been pretty interesting to meet him. But it's funny because in New York there's a lot of you meet people. There's people, there's like famous people that kind of whatever you cross paths with people and and it's not it's not like you're kind of. You need to be friends with people. If you're friends with people, you get this, you get a really nice interaction and, conversations and stuff. If you meet people at some event or at some kind of thing or whatever, they could be really smart and whatever, but you can't, it's just weird talking to them in a, prolonged conversational way. It's like, you don't really have a basis for that, so it's
for sure.
People are weird. Yeah, people are weird. They want to just kind of do their thing, and really and again, if you're friends or at a party, some sort of social thing that kind of can make it, kind of make work. But otherwise, it can be a little kind of like, do your thing.
I find just carrying 20 random questions, when you see a famous person, you whip them out of your pocket and just ask them what they had for breakfast and their psychedelic experience. Yeah, quick way to make friends.
So you can time jump either into the random future or the random past. Which do you choose?
Oh, I think we got to go to the future.
I think the future.
I pick future.
It would be fascinating to be at some moments in the past, no question about it. But you got to go to the future.
So I think this one's my favorite. I think we're right up there with the psychedelic one, which is, what is your worst job? I feel like this kind of brings out the common humanity in all of us. What was your worst job ever?
Kevin has truly had some terrible jobs. I'm interested to see which he'd have to pick.
No, there's some crazy ones. I did a lot of work in a lot of crappy jobs, when I was in high school and college and thereafter. I was doing medical waste pickup for a dialysis thing, driving between 5 different centers, picking up the kind of sharps waste. That wasn't that bad, honestly. You're mostly in a van, kind of driving around. That was kind of fine. I did swing shift in a candy factory, working in the cream and gum room, which is like, circus peanuts and gummy bears. And that was really pretty intense because the room is hot, it's like 100-degree room. And then you're bringing the stuff into this dry storage room that was about 120 degrees, wheeling these things from 2 to 10 at night. That was an intense job. And I was a college kid at summer. I was like college boy with these people that were, working that were not college boys. And, so that was, it was pretty intense. It was pretty interesting. I could just leave. I was, going back to my kind of like, college days at the end of it, and they were not, so it was pretty, kind of pretty eye opening. But yeah, so medical waste pickup and candy factory. I did when I was in high school, early in high school, I worked in this metal shop. And I was like kind of low man on the totem pole there. That it's like this kind of 6-man shop down the street, and they had me doing. In retrospect, they had me like doing like washing all this stuff in chemicals and all this stuff. It was just like very poor safety practices. In retrospect, I'm just like, man, that was not good.
That sounds horrible.
So I don't know, a bunch of crazy jobs.
To the flip side, what's your favorite time of day to work?
Wait, I'm gonna throw my foul card here because I want to hear Jen's worst job.
Jen's worst job.
I don't think we got Jen's worst job.
I think the job was not so terrible, but the interview was insane. I had to during an interview at a toy store, I was asked to address all my answers to the questions to a large stuffed gorilla. So I had to.
No way.
True story.
way.
Which was
True story.
honestly just
100% true story.
just averting my gaze and talking to the gorilla was just so humiliating. I don't know.
Must be
I found that really humiliating.
Was there a goal or an objective other than like demeaning you or like was it a
Yes,
power play?
I think it was some sort of like world of theater, like how do you engage play and imagination? But like when there's a power differential like that, you're like, I don't feel so playful. Can I please be killed?
Yucky.
Yes. The only thing sadder about that job was one of my fellow coworkers was Nirvana's first drummer. And he just really shouldn't have quit
Dave
that
Grohl?
band. No, before him.
No, way before Dave
Oh,
Grohl.
way back. Okay.
They had a drummer named, was it Clay? Was that his name?
I think
Clay?
so. Anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
So kids grow up thinking like, I want to work in a candy factory, Charlie in a chocolate factory, or maybe a toy store. That'd be great. But listen to the McCoys. Those are horrible jobs. You don't want to be in a candy factory. You don't want to be in a toy factory.
No, kids. That's
you're better off.
It's still capitalism. Run.
Better off collecting. Better off
Misinformation.
collecting discarded Sharp medical disposables.
Yeah, we need to hear from the Oompa Loompas now. We got to talk to them.
They're like, hey.
It's hot. It is so
don't diss
hot.
our work. Don't diss our work.
Good call with the foul card. Artem, I will give it to you. Back to 22. We are nearly finished out, but I do want to know when it feels best in the day to work for you guys.
Honestly, I'm really most after saying I my vices kind of sleep in, but late morning to early afternoon, 10 to 2 is really most productive time.
Totally agree. I get sleepy at 2. And then I have to have tea or take breaks. And once the breaks start, the day is soon over.
Did you just yawn? Was that a yawn?
And here we are at 2:22, Dan. So
nap time.
We're really stretching them out. Well, I think there's only 2 more questions, and this one is very lightweight and breezy. Mm-hmm. What is your ideal afterlife scenario?
Ideal afterlife scenario. Ideal afterlife scenario. The very fact of there being one.
Where are we?
Yeah, anything north of oblivion, I'm good with.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that. And I think the 2 of you are actually the first to complete 22 questions. No one has gotten through this list. The last question that we do have for 22 questions is nature, nurture, or Nietzsche?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a great question. That's a great question. I was a philosophy major as an undergrad and studied a lot of Nietzsche. So it's hard to, there's a real, the world we live in a Nietzschean world, very much so. But we also are parents of 2 children and see the true awesome power of nature, of the fact that the children arrive as, infantile babies, but yet at the same time fully formed. They're whatever kind of little thing you're seeing as a kind of cute little baby is exactly the same thing except scaled up when they're 15, and you're just like, wow, you haven't changed a bit since you were like 1. So nature is pretty, but nature and Nietzsche, it's kind of, it's like, where does the will to power come from, right? Isn't it kind of nature, So I don't know. There's a parsing the nature to Nietzsche thing is an interesting question.
So nurture is just like SOL, I guess, right, Kevin, for you?
Screw nurture.
No, we're very nurturing.
Because we could be saving a lot of time.
Yeah. Could be
Make it a lot more art.
Exactly.
Could be saving a lot of time. All of the above is the answer.
Yeah, I think nature too. Nature. I'll say nature.
Yeah.
I think that's it, Dan. Is that we made it all? I feel like we need
this is
extra
wild.
special sound effects. We've made it through all 22 questions and had a great time doing it. Thanks to you both for coming on, and hopefully it was fun for you. I know I had a blast.
Super fun.
Yeah. really good to get to know more about both of you, and exciting to know more about your work and your life, and excited to see the new work that's coming out.
This has been delightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a bit more to get to on today's episode, but first, a pre-roll.
Hey y'all, this is Hannah, one of the producers behind I'm New Here, Depop Studios' forthcoming documentary film, directed by your lovely Dankness host / Sundance Grand Jury Award winner, Dan Sickles. The film tells the story of an isolated internet user who falls down the crypto rabbit hole, encounters the visionaries behind the NFT movement, and ultimately rediscovers their connection to art and humanity along the way. I know I'm a little biased, but this is the definitive NFT documentary made for and by the community. So I'm calling on you, dear listener, to help us successfully complete this film by becoming a newbie collector today. I'm talking about our film's very own NFT collection of 10,000 avatars whose pixelicious traits pay homage to our iconic cast. Y'all, the amazing thing about becoming a newbie collector is that we've partnered with a roster of incredible artists in our community to bring you the dankest artist collaborations made exclusively for newbie holders for free. That means the newbie is the best and most accessible way to start your own crypto art collection. So, open that browser tab right now. Come on, we both know you're holding your phone. And go to newhere.xyz and mint.
Thank you to our guests, Jennifer and Kevin McCoy. It has been an honor having you join us on the Dankness.
You should make sure to follow them on all of your social medias at McCoy Space. That's at MCCOY SPACE, and on McCoyspace.com.
And as always, big love to Stella
love.
and the Dank Tones.
And
Big love.
You can find us, Art Gnome and Sickles, on the interwebs at thedankness.xyz, newhere.xyz, and of course, clubnft.com. You can also catch us on our personal accounts at Art Gnome, ARTNOME, and at Dan Sickles.
And without further ado, have a diggity 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 dank 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 day. Stella, take us out.
Dank, 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 dank.
They are based on matter. There is no matter here. Our identities have no bodies, so unlike you, we cannot obtain order by physical coercion.
It's been fun to see a lot of these projects get rediscovered, and people just coming into crypto for the first time through NFTs has been interesting to see.
Different artists really working to answer that question too, and like make this entire system more tangible and more digestible for people through art and how art communicates. And that's why it makes so much sense. Like that's why PFPs make a lot of sense. That's why crypto art makes sense. It's like these ways of attempting to communicate what this is all about.
Real life art.
Vlad and Stella are audio-visual artists collaborating to make waves in the Dankiverse with their trippy, acid-infused art project called the Danktones. They have been super busy lately, working around the clock to create some mind-bending image composition, NFT art that's about to turn heads in the community. They're hitting all the retro music store vibes. The podcast cover art includes stickers, holographics, shrink wrap, and even some redacted sound effects. Yes, you heard that right. This wild duo is bringing back physical media vibes in a big way with this release. But it's not just the medium that's impressive, it's the audio-visual art itself. Flood and Stella's art is truly something special, with bright, bold colors and intricate patterns and zany sound effects that will have you feeling like you're tripping on acid. So if you're a fan of NFT art and you're looking for something a little bit different, definitely check out Flood and Stella's The Danktones project. Thanks for your time. Have a dank 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 dank.